Hello, and thanks for tuning in to Compass Media. I'm your host, Finbar Markey. This is one of several specials that we're doing around the local and European elections on Compass Media. We're featuring independent candidates from around the country because we believe they have the least financial and least party team backing of anyone that's running in these elections. So we want to give independent candidates an opportunity and a place to be able to express themselves, what they believe in and what they want for and from their communities into the near future, and essentially why they want you to vote for them. We're joined today by three candidates. The first candidate is from Dungarvan in County Waterford, Joyce. We've also got Jeanette Birch from South East Inner City Dublin constituency, and we have Fiona McCormack from Cootehill Borough in County Cavan. Thanks for joining us today, folks. I'm going to get stuck in very quickly because there's a lot to talk about. So I'm going to turn to Fiona first, if you guys don't mind. Fiona, if you take a minute or two now to tell people why you're running in the local elections in your area and why they should vote for you.
Well, I'm basically running in my local elections because nobody else really stood forward, and the community really needed somebody, especially in hard times now. I just think that the local government and I just think the local politicians have kind of, lost the ability to listen. I felt I had to step forward on this. I felt I was let down by others. I think they're out of touch and with struggling working people and the services that are needed. I have a genuine human interest in people. I'm a healthcare worker, and I'm an advocate for people with no voice. So I just thought I was perfect really for this position. I'll try, with everyone's help, really to bring solutions that will change the community, for the better. I just think a new approach is needed, and the community have to have more involvement in discussions, and they need to engage with the politicians at all times. And I'm doing this because I care about people and our community. I want to see it thrive, and I want proper services, that are needed, and fairness to all and safety for everyone. So that's basically why I'm going.
Okay. Jeanette, I'll put that question over to you next. If you want to take yourself off mute there and tell your constituency why they should vote for you.
So the reason I'm running is for very similar reasons to Fiona. I feel my community is just so disadvantaged at the moment. I come from a background of homelessness, addiction, and I have 2 children now. I've been 3 years in recovery as well. I've been through all the systems, all the services, and I know they're not fit for purpose. I can pinpoint exactly where they've gone wrong. And to be honest, there's no better person in my area to advocate for those people, for the homeless, for people that are in active addiction, for people that are living on the streets or in hostels, and for those who are struggling even to buy their first home. I feel there's no way out for them. I'm running because, again, I have 2 very young boys, and I can't face them growing up with things continuing to go on the way they are.
Okay, thank you, Jeanette. Joyce, why are you running? What are you going to do for community? Why should your community support you?
Yeah, thank you, Finbar. I suppose great passionate voices there from the 2 ladies in different contexts, but I can certainly relate to both of them in similar and certain ways. I suppose I'm a patriotic activist, I suppose, since around that dreaded word back in 2019 that came about, and the pandemic and COVID-19, the lockdown era, it seemed to be a catalyst for me in politics. Wouldn't have had a major interest in politics growing up, to be quite honest with you. I suppose, as I say, just slightly before March 2020, early 2019, maybe even, I became interested in what was going on in my local area. I became interested in the decline of the local area, I suppose, in certain ways. The community had gotten, maybe, I suppose, inflicted by drugs, I suppose, is the best way of putting it. A massive housing crisis. It's been tough, I think, on certain people in my neck of the woods for the last number of years. The effects on businesses, tourism, mental health, drug crisis. I think they assist each other. Housing and immigration, of course. You know, immigration is hot on everybody's lips at the minute, and some people don't really want to mention that, you know, Finbar, and I understand and appreciate that for different ways, but at the end of the day, it is a major issue inflicting many communities across our country, and it is a problem in my constituency. It's, I suppose, our contribution within my community by housing and sealing off, I suppose, amenities such as bed and breakfast and hotels, and shutting them down for public usage. This is devastating to certain businesses, the knock-on effects of such, you know. I could go on. You know, I'm sure we'll have a great opportunity to speak throughout, and I thank you for that, Finbar. But, you know, there's a lot of reasons why I have done so. I've been in party politics. I don't want to knock anyone who is. I have great friends in it, involved in parties across the board. And I just feel as though party politics represents parties and not people. And that is why I chose to run as an independent candidate. At 29, I became the vice chairman of the Irish Freedom Party and was grateful for the opportunity. But to take this opportunity to run in the local elections in Dungarvan as an independent, I felt as though it was the best thing to do, Finbar.
Okay, guys. Back to Fiona. Fiona, what I took from your opening statement is that you feel that the community need more consultation with the local authorities and there should be more involved in decision making there. If you get into the local authorities, if you get elected, what actions will you take when you're in the chamber and when you're in the council to be able to formulate and manifest the changes with regards to consultation and people being more involved in decision making?
Well, I think we need to challenge the system, really. I think I will call it out. If I see something wrong, you know, if I see unfairness, I'll call it out. If I see money being wasted elsewhere, I'll say so. I want to be accountable. I'll show the steps. If there's something not been done for somebody, I'll show people. I'll actually be transparent. I'll meet my community often and tell them exactly what goes on at these monthly meetings. You know, I'm doing this because I feel, you know, this is what has been failed to others. We're not being transparent. Nobody is telling us. Communication is vital to the community. I think we need someone to fight our corner, and I'll be honest, I'll be accountable, and I'll make sure people are informed of local decisions, and not to abuse the system. I think we need to prioritise people who live and contribute to our society as well. Like there's people that can't work because of different issues, vulnerable people, you know, they're getting treated differently from, you know, people coming into the country, and the same benefits aren't being offered to them. You know, I see it in my job, in my community, the basic needs aren't being met, you know, especially for people with disabilities, you know. So I will always speak to my community in different areas, meet with them maybe once a month and tell them exactly what's happening.
Okay, Jeanette, your focus seemed to be on services, addiction services, rehabilitation services, and housing in your local area. And I got a distinct sense that you feel that you're from a particularly disadvantaged area in Dublin. I may be wrong about that, but just from what you were saying, if you get into your local authority as a councillor, what are you going to do? What actions, what words are you going to speak? What motions are you going to put down to try to solidify and improve the services that you believe are broken?
So to begin with, I would definitely urge for everyone to start seeing addiction and mental health as one and the same, because you can't have one without the other when it comes to addiction alone. The services that we have are more about harm reduction instead of getting people to a place of being in recovery. They tend to be more focused around getting someone stabilized on a synthetic version of whatever they're on, a pharmaceutical version of whatever they're on, instead of getting them into full recovery. So that would be one of the first things that I would aim to do. And I would also try and get people to see these, you know, people that are in addiction are still human beings. You see them being called junkies and scumbags and dole heads and all the other horrible words that are used towards them. Nobody is going to take help until all that stops. Another thing to do with housing is, for example, the property that I'm in council housing myself, and emergency planning laws were used to build it. That were used. 57 families were housed because of the emergency planning laws. We need to bring them back in, because again, that's 57 families that have been taken off the streets, just like my family was. We were in homeless accommodation for 2 years. We need to bring back in emergency planning laws in order to build places. And again, there's nothing wrong with bypassing planning laws. We all know it's just bureaucracy and red tape just for the sake of it. So that would be another thing that I'd be advocating for. And again, as Fiona pointed out, the transparency, the lack of it that's going on in the councils is extortionate. It's absolutely extortionate. They are hiding so much from us. They are going behind our backs. They're lying to us. And that's something I can't take. I can't take. And I will be honest about every single thing that is going on. And I won't stand for it.
Okay. So there is quite a distinction I've noted over the years between the elected members of a council and then the permanent civil service council that exists. And one hand doesn't know what the other is doing. So I do get what you're saying with that. Aaron, what would you do to some of your focus was, and again, on housing. We won't go to housing too much because that's a separate question that we're going to speak on. You mentioned mental health, but you also mentioned immigration as well. And I think that one of the topics that has your backup over the last year to year and a half is immigration in itself. So let's not dilly-dally around that either. What would you do in your local authority to address the subject matters that you're concerned about?
Yeah, immigration to me, yeah, it is indeed something that got my back up. Indeed, immigration, some of the policies, the government stance on it, as I say, it does indeed start and stop with our own government and not indeed the immigrants. We can't blame them. We have to, in some way, shape or form, I believe, Finbar, address the uncontrolled immigration issue, the amount of individuals possibly coming over our borders. We are seeing the effects of this in our communities, across our constituencies, across the country. We are seeing it. We don't like harping on about it. I personally don't. I know many others who don't either. But highlighting this type of topic and speaking about it is a must, I feel, at this point in time. We're seeing so many communities across the country come out highlighting the issues, highlighting the closure of their hotels and amenities, like the cancellation of weddings, funerals. This has a massive knock-on effect within communities. The availability for tourism and visiting family in certain constituencies, towns, areas, and cities across the country. This is going on with years now. Years.
So we might as well get on to our next question at this point anyway. How do you think your local authority is addressing the immigration crisis? Do you think they're doing a good job? And if not, what do you think needs to be done?
Yeah, do I think they're doing a good job, Rick? I don't think they're listening to the people on it. I don't think that they're acknowledging the knock-on effects that their stances have at present regarding it. And the closure of such hotels to the public, like Clonea Hotel within Dungarvan, within the region of Dungarvan. And I really don't. What would I do to change it? What would I try to influence? We need to have these hotels and bed and breakfasts and those accommodations that were closed returned to the public. That's what I really do believe that we need done, Finbar. I really do. Across each and every constituency, not only my own. I feel as though at this point in time, those of whom who aren't being integrated, or those of whom who are possibly not here or working or integrating into the system, we have to address this. There's countries around the world that have open arms, Finbar, and we are one of them, the land of 1,000 welcomes. But there are countries around the world who have strict, stringent, and disciplined manners in which you enter the country or stay within a country. And I just feel as though Ireland, and it's been seen in the media, I've read it at least 4 times in recent weeks, Finbar, where Ireland is being described as a soft touch, and I'm afraid I'm at that point where I'm starting to think so too.
Okay. Fiona, How do you think your local authority has responded to the mass immigration crisis that we're living through? And is there anything that you would change?
Well, look, it's like having 10 chairs in a room and then putting 100 people in that room, and not enough chairs in the room for people, and then labeling them chairs and putting, other people, last on the chairs. Nobody's going to integrate that way. Everyone's going to, despise the people that got the chairs, so that's exactly the way it is. They're not going to integrate. Immigration's top on my policy. It affects the rest of my policies, between infrastructure and services. People on the doors, they understand the difference between controlled legal immigration and the unchecked illegal immigration. It's destroying our communities. It's unfair to everyone, and the genuine refugees lose out on the support that they need and services. And the housing, our own population, they're stretched thin because the resources are diverted elsewhere. We can push councils to prioritise planning, housing and funding decisions that are in the best interest of our current population. We can elect Senate members who hold the same values as us, and together we can push the government to make better decisions for the sake of our country.
Okay, Jeanette, how do you think your local authority has responded to the immigration crisis, and what would you do differently, if anything?
Well, I live very close to the tent cities that were erected in Dublin, near the iPass Centre. And I think it's just been horrific. We've been lied to about who was coming here. We were told it was going to be women and children. And I also live in very close proximity to a charity called Men in the City. And we see the Irish men going in and out just for a hot shower and a meal. They come in, they go in, they get their dinner, they get a shower, maybe a change of clothes, and they go off. We have the immigrants hanging around there 24/7. And I'm not just talking about 3 or 4 of them. I'm talking about dozens upon dozens of them right beside a playground. They're using drugs there. They're intimidating all of us who walk by. And it doesn't seem like they're here for genuine reasons. It really doesn't. So I think our councils have lied to us. They've pulled the rugs out from underneath our feet as well. And I don't think we can trust any of them that are currently in power anymore. And I think that's been the case for a very long time. But it's absolutely, totally inappropriate as to how they thought that we were a small little island like Ireland was going to be able to take in this many people when our own services are beyond the scope of imploding. We can't take it anymore. We've got children on waiting lists for 5 and 6 years. We've got elderly people that are brushed to the side and put in a corner, or even dying in the back rooms of hospitals because we don't have the services available for our own people, let alone for bringing 100, 200, 250,000 people into this country. We don't have the room and we don't have the services. And as Fiona said, you don't bring someone into a house where the floorboards are about to cave in and say the instructor's manual says these floorboards can only hold 100 people. They're at breaking point already. Well, let's bring another 50 people in and collapse them all together. That's what I feel is happening right now. And unless something is done, and unless people can just one last time just put their trust into people who know the system, who know what's going on, who see it day in, day out, who've lived through it, unless they put their trust in these people like ourselves, the whole country is going to collapse. And I can't have that. I can't have that. I can't have my boys growing up like that. I really can't.
Are any is worried that there are some people, not many, but there are some people who use language on this issue and label everybody as sexual predators that are coming into the country and things like that? That is there a danger in that, do you guys think, that innocent people who are coming here for financial reasons, economic reasons, that they will be labeled and maybe endangered into the future? Is it important, do we think, like for instance, when I spoke to the you three guys, Aaron, you opened up by saying this is not about immigrants, it's about the politicians. So that's all accepted.
Yes.
But is there a responsibility on the part of not just elected councillors, but people who put themselves forward as public representatives to when we're discussing these things, to make sure that the message going out is that message, that this is about the political decisions. It's not about, because I'm sure if some of the mainstream media listen to the conversation that we've just had, they will try to take things out of that and say far right, for even though you all spoke about services and you all spoke about housing and things like that. Do you believe that it's the role of a public representative when they're discussing things like this to be very clear in relation to not labeling anybody and painting everybody with the same brush? Aaron, I'll hit you up first on that.
Yeah, I absolutely do, Finbar. And I'll be truthful. That's exactly why I spoke the way I did. I nearly feel at this stage, when speaking about certain issues, you nearly have to explain yourself definitively. You have to put it clearly across where you're standing, because people can take you so wrong. And a simple statement now can be turned and switched into so many different contexts. And we seem to be living in that era, Finbar, where you correctly described there. You know, we should take responsibility for what it is. Number one, we're stating and saying, yes. But, you know, I do think it's of great importance that where we stand with these things, we make it clear to people where we stand with it. Because unfortunately, as you touched on, there seems to be this degree of media out there that far right rhetoric or turning of speech and all of this kind of thing. This is going on for a while now, but there's a lot of simple people who are indeed, as you say, falling into the categories of being painted with the same brush as maybe certain individuals that they are certainly not on level with. And I think it's incredibly important now, even more so than ever, to incredibly define and be responsible for what it is that you're saying and stating when it comes to not only the issues that we're discussing now, Finbar, across the board.
Okay. Fiona, what do you think about the idea that as a public representative, elected or not, that it's very important to couch our language in, as Aaron said, a definitive and clear way when we're talking about issues like this, because not only could we be misinterpreted, but some people out there could pick up the wrong idea themselves and take an action that could be dangerous. The public, I know it's almost a stupid question in a way, but do you believe that the public have, as representatives, have that responsibility to be very clear in case people's lives are endangered?
Well, absolutely. You know, I mean, I hate when people say, you know, oh, you know, the services here wouldn't survive without immigrants. That's not who we're talking about. That's not exactly. I mean, they're legal people that came here and started working and contributing to society, and actually, you know, integrating with everybody. Then that's because everyone's equal. These are people coming in that aren't equal. They're not equal because they're not being treated as equal. They're getting more than us, and then they're getting treated differently than us. You know, how can anybody, you know, interact with each other when they get more than the rest of us? You know, but we also have to be clear on that, because, you know, you can't put so many people into one building and expect them all to get on. I mean, it wouldn't matter where, if they all came from, you know, the west of Ireland. If you put all of the west of Ireland into one town, it wouldn't work either. It's exactly the same. The services aren't there, but we have to be practical and transparent and be honest about this. Nobody has been far right here. We're all speaking honestly, you know, and we will be open and honest about things. We're speaking, we're right. We're not far right, we're right.
Okay. And Jeanette, yourself, do you think that public representatives have to be very careful what they're saying on the issue of immigration to ensure that what we're saying doesn't stoke racism and hate and possibly murder or attack or physical assault into the future?
Yeah, and that's something that I'm always explaining to people, that I'm not anti-immigration, I'm anti-illegal immigration, because there's a big difference. You know, there's a big difference between coming here on a work visa, and I've made it very clear in the Dublin voter guide as well, that I am not anti-immigration, and neither is 99% of this country. I am anti-illegal immigration though, because if I got on a plane today and just suddenly lost my passport, do you think I'd be able to get into that country? Or do you think I'd be able to get back to Ireland with no
What do you
document?
think about okay, whether they have their documents or not, that doesn't dispel whether they are or are not economic migrants. But they may not be rapists and they may not be sexual predators. That's the point I'm making to you.
That's really dangerous territory there. You can't go accusing anybody of being a rapist or a terrorist or anything like that without definitive proof. They are two of the most serious things you could ever be accused of, is to be called a rapist and or a terrorist. But I do understand people's concerns that some of these people could be. But again, you cannot just start calling all of them rapists and terrorists. That's just insanity at its finest. It really is. And somebody will end up murdering the wrong person if this keeps going on.
And a final question that we have for you guys is around housing. Housing has been the principal failure of both the national and local government throughout Ireland over the last 10 years. There are houses being built now. We can see lots of finishes happening, but capacity issues mean that it looks like we'll never get out of this housing crisis. Do you think your local authority has served the community well in terms of the housing crisis? And if not, what would you do better? Fiona, we'll hit you up with that first.
Yeah, I think instead of buying developments, I think it's better that you just touch up the houses that are just lying derelict. I mean, they're going to cost less, but I think, you need to put pressure on people that own the houses, maybe to give them grants, which they are being given, to do up these houses. It will cost the government less money, and then there's less houses lying idle, rather than excavating a big site somewhere and putting a load of people in an area that's going to cost millions. Even excavating a site costs an awful lot of money. But if you do up houses bit by bit, like the councils do in England, that's the way they work. They offer money, finances to people to do up their houses and take them over. But instead of doing that, touching them up, costing a fortune, people will integrate better then, because you're just put in different spots. And houses are mostly built, better, the old style houses. So they only need grants to do them up. But also we need to increase thresholds and threshold limits, or remove them completely, so people can access the local authority home loans. And you can base the repayments on the ability to pay their existing rents. More people then can afford their own home in this country then.
Okay, those are two good ideas. Jeanette, has your local authority served this community in terms of housing, and what would you do different?
No, we have one of the highest rates of homelessness in the country, and we have families that are sleeping on the floors of Garda stations every night because our emergency accommodations are full. We need to bring back the emergency planning laws for our local authorities so that they can just keep building while bypassing the planning permission law or stages, which can go on for years. We also need more regeneration projects. There's currently one going up around Pearse Street, but like the Oliver Bond estate, for example, has been falling to pieces for the last 20 years, and nothing has been done about it at all.
Aaron, housing in Dungarvan in Waterford, what's it like? Has the council served this properly? What would you do different?
The housing in my constituency, like no other really across the last few years and months, it's becoming a big problem. Hidden homeless being a massive issue in my own constituency, and the lack of housing for indeed maybe the generations that have come up through Dungarvan itself. There's been massive, I suppose, attempts, to build houses. And they're nearly Abbeyside, Dungarvan, Kilrossenty would be regions that were across my constituency, Ballinroad. They're nearly meeting each other at this point, and I just don't feel as though that the council indeed are keeping up with the need for housing. So therefore we need to build more social housing. I believe it was Jeanette there briefly touched on the regeneration projects. The upkeep, the lack of in my constituency is a big issue for social housing estates across the board. I think there needs to be a big regeneration project there for the locals who live in such projects. The uncontrolled immigration issue has had deep effect across my constituency for both locals and indeed tourism. The lack of availability of accommodation is at a detrimental point, and what I would definitely attempt to do would be to build more social houses, bring in a regeneration project immediately for social housing estates, and maybe assist some of the people who are on HAP A lot of HAP people are finding it extremely difficult in and around housing, as you mentioned just very briefly, Finbar. A lot of people who are awarded HAP find it very difficult to actually even get property at times. And as well, I support quite a lot of families who were in court recently with vulture funds for facing unlawful evictions. This seems to be a massive element or activity, element of activity, excuse me, regarding housing. That some people are, I suppose, need to look at a little bit more. The amounts of families that are being affected and obviously resulting in their homelessness, being affected by maybe unlawful evictions and targeted by vulture funds and things like that. It's going on quite a lot. I think it needs to be spoken about a little bit more, and it's certainly causing a major effect to families across the board in the southeast where I'm from, by facing eviction and then indeed losing their homes and not having any homes to go into, Finbar. You know, these issues need to be highlighted, and I will continue highlighting these issues and addressing what it is that I said I would do.
Yeah. Do any of you feel, just out of interest, do any of you feel that the local authority just doesn't, as an elected councillors, don't really have any power anymore? You had one of their final powers of planning essentially taken away through the Land Development Act, Land Agency Act, a couple of years ago. And so to my mind, they don't really have that much impact, councillors, anymore. Fiona, do you think that councillors need to be re-empowered, or do you think that they have enough power at the moment?
Yes. No, I do think that they need to be more empowered. You know, they need more structure. You know, when the town councils, councillors were abolished, and they lost that power to fight for local issues that were really matter to local people. You know, all elected councillors get to vote for Shenod elections, but I do think that they need more power to empower people, to especially in planning. I just think, and housing, definitely, I think that they need to have more power, given to them, because they don't have enough.
Jeanette, what do you think? The elected councillors, representatives, don't have the powers that they used to have, and is there opportunity to re-empower them in some way? What do you think about that?
Yeah, and I think it's a disgrace that that the current.
I know you have a wee babby there.
I think that the current and the previous councillors have just allowed their complete incompetence to go to their head. I really do. I think they're an absolute disgrace. They've let us all down. But I do think that accountability can be brought back, and that's by electing people who can take responsibility, who can admit when they've done wrong, and who can also who are willing to educate themselves and who are willing to put themselves in the heart of their communities in order to help.
Okay. Folks, I'm going to give you the final minute to say anything that maybe you haven't said. Or on the other hand, if you want to reiterate what you've said, if you want to give a final spiel on why your local constituencies should vote for you. Fiona, do you want to kick that off?
Yeah. Look, I intend to be transparent and communicate with my community, leaving no one out, filter down the decisions made at council level. They're entitled to know where their money is used and been budgeted. We need to involve the community more in decisions. We need to get more of the community together, consisting of diverse people, people with disabilities, low-income families. I'd love to empower people that feel they have no voice in all walks of life. I'd like to build a community that are good at problem solving, team working, and give people a purpose in the community. Everyone has a passion and a skill, and I just intend to empower that. I'll make sure it's inclusive and fairness for all. And I'll try and promote a better community, projects, and get the community more involved in this. It's the foundation of a thriving community when everyone has a part in it. We need to, think of the taxes. If we build more taxes to provide not just basic but great services, it leads to economic growth, and more money to expand schools, doctor surgeries, community projects. For the younger generation, so that's really what I'm about. I just want fairness. I work in disability sector for the HSE. I love my job, and I just want to empower the community and be an advocate for them in the exact same way.
That's great. Thank you. And Aaron, your final statement, whether you want to sum up what you've said, if you want to say something new, that the floor is yours for a minute.
Yeah, thanks, Finbar. I would definitely want to speak about supporting more immunities for young people in my community, people to kind of prevent the likes of, as I stated in my own leaflet, boredom, trouble, and drug use. This is massive to me. I'd like to see the creation of something like a drop-in cafe or a centre for those affected by mental health and drug abuse. I do sister to two, as I mentioned again briefly earlier on, mental health and the drugs crisis that I see not only maybe in parts of my community, I see it across the country, and it's something I am incredibly passionate about, and I'd like to see better services for people who are seeking help also. Again, my own constituency massively affected by tourism, effects on business, down through maybe the last 4 years in different ways from the pandemic up until now recently, with the knock-on effects of hotel closures, but fighting for opportunities for local businesses, supporting local businesses, and especially young entrepreneurs. I would like to see growth in my local economy. It's actually quite prosperous, dare I say it, but it's the people who aren't being listened to, they're not being heard, and I'd like to be that voice box for them, and certainly the housing and immigration crisis we could talk about for a long time, but it does have to be highlighted, and it does have to be highlighted in my community, and the knock-on effects in which towards healthcare, education, and childcare. We have a number of things we could speak about, Finbar, and I think people are slowly getting a lot of the independence points across the board and across the country, and I'd like to wish them all the very best to look, not only the two lovely ladies that I'm on here with this evening, but all of them. And I just think it's time for change, and we need to make a difference. And if we say we're going to do it, we just have to go and do it, not just speak about it. And we need to put this into operation. And the sooner we do, the better. And I hope the people get that understanding, and that they believe in their local independence, and support them into the future, and support them on June 7th. And once again, I thank you for the opportunity in joining you, Finbar, and I wish everyone the very best of luck on June the 7th, and indeed into the future.
Thank you, Aaron. And Jeanette, your closing statement, you can introduce something new, or on the other hand, you can reiterate what you've just said.
So yeah, again, the reason I'm running is because I see the way that the country is going, and I'm not having my two boys growing up the way it is, even though they're quite demanding as it is. But yeah, look, all our services need a complete overhaul. The HSE is not badly funded; it's badly managed. We have more than enough funding there to make it run appropriately, and we choose not to because of the people that are in control of that. I think the same goes for housing. I think we need to get rid of vulture funds. I think they have been one of the worst things to happen to this country. The small landlords made up 83% of the market up until 2021. And because of the eviction moratoriums that were put on them, that's why they started leaving the market. They were terrified that their own private property was going to be basically taken away from them by the state. So between a mixture of social housing and private housing, we need a total overhaul. And I also think that HAP is another thing we need to look at with regards to housing. HAP is completely not fit for purpose. We have people that are paying more on HAP than they would be paying with a mortgage. And Fiona brought up a great point there earlier on, where every month that you've paid rent, that should contribute towards being qualified for a mortgage, for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, look, we need big change. We really do, and it's going to take time. It really is. Rome wasn't built in a day, as they say.
Well,
But
folks,
look,
I?
I've been through the system, and I know how it works inside out. I've come through it the other side. So the job that a local councillor does, I may have not been trained to do it, but I know what they do, and I would highly recommend that people give me a shot at least.
Okay, folks. First of all, thank you all for coming on to the show. It's a brave step to run in any type of an election, a local election, a European election, or a national election. You're putting yourself in front of your community in some ways for judgment. So it's a brave step, but it's also a step that shows your commitment to your families, your friends and your communities as well. So I commend you for that. Aaron Joyce from Dungarvan in County Waterford, Fiona McCormack from Coodkill in Bailieborough, and of course Jeanette Birch from South Inner City in Dublin. Thanks for joining us this evening. I hope to be talking to you after the elections as elected councillors.
Thank you. Thank you very much.